Good morning and welcome to the Worship Center, Palm Beach Gardens. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about forgiveness, what we do with forgiveness, what the Bible says about forgiveness, and how we use it. Imagine you're standing in a grocery store in line, few people in front of you, so you know you're going to be here for a while, and someone walks by, bumps into you. You didn't see him coming. Person just bumps into you. You look up, you see him, and you notice that they weren't really paying attention to where they were going. Maybe they didn't notice that they bumped into you. So you think nothing of it. You focus on the line. You're just waiting for this thing to move so you can pay for your goods and leave. Well, shortly thereafter, this same person comes back by the opposite way and they bump into you again. This time a little bit harder. You look up and you notice they're juggling items. They have, items under their arm and their hand. Their other hand, they got their phone and not paying attention to where they're going. So you say, you know what? They're not paying attention. They're not aware of their surroundings. So you don't think much of it again. You see, let this here go. Your line begins to move. So you step up. And just before you step up, you hear sounds. You hear someone griping, frustrated, boisterous. And they're talking about, how this store needs more cashiers, how this isn't right. They shouldn't have to wait all this time looking for a cashier to take their money. You see him coming your way again. So what do? The line's moving. You step up out of his way. You saw him coming. Somehow he manages to drop one of his items right near you. And as he picks it up, wham, bumps into you again. So now you're frustrated. You're thinking, come on now. Watch where you're going. Be conscious of your surroundings. You're not the only person here. What do? Do you forgive this person? So the obvious answer is yes. And if so, how many times? Now my church folks will be quick to say 7 times 70. And true, it's easy to say 7 times 70. It's easy to say, but how easy is it to do when someone continuously offends you, whether it be a stranger or someone you're close with? But two questions here. What exactly is forgiveness? And why should we forgive? Let's dive in. What is forgiveness? According to greatergood.berkeley.edu, it says forgiveness is a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. Now, I'll insert an addendum and say that not so much whether they deserve it or whether we think that they deserve it, because we're not in a position or place to determine whether someone else needs forgiveness. We can talk about that some other time, but I think we all know. Notice it didn't say to pretend that the situation was light, didn't matter much, or that the act is excused or acceptable. In other words, we can forgive, but not sit back and allow someone to continue to offend us or make it seem as if it's all right. Just continue to offend us and we'll just say, hey, I forgive you. There are action steps in between. The Bible gives us clear examples of what forgiveness looks like in action, starting in the book of Genesis. I want to illustrate something for you. Genesis it's the first book of the Bible. Genesis explains a few things to us. One of the main characters in Genesis. He's got a lot of coverage in there, somewhere like 23 chapters about this one individual. Joseph is his name. And if you've forgotten or are unfamiliar with Joseph, I'll give you a little condensed version of just some of the things that happened to Joseph in his earlier years. So Joseph had it rough with his brothers. First, they plotted to kill him. One brother, Reuben, had compassion and convinced the other brothers not to hurt him, and instead throw him into a pit in the wilderness, which is kind of, crazy. It's like, he said, don't even hurt him. Let's throw him into a pit in the wilderness. If you're thrown into a pit in the wilderness, you're not likely to make it out alive anyway. But that was part of the plan. They said, if we do that, then they can't convict us for murder because we didn't kill him. If he died, he died. His intent was to come back, and Reuben's intent, with his compassionate heart, his intent was to come back and save his brother later, just to kind of, because they had plotted, and like maybe he didn't want to seem like the odd man out. He wasn't the only one. It was another one, but his plan was, okay, since you guys want to do that, I'm not okay with it. So let's just do this for now, and we'll leave it at that. But he went back to save him, and he wasn't there. But before we get there, his intent was to come back, save his brother, because he had compassion. Some Ishmaelites were passing by in Reuben's absence. And when that happened, the other brothers sold Joseph for 8 ounces of silver. 8 ounces of silver, let's get rid of him. They ended up ripping his garment, putting some, I believe it was a goat or sheep. They took the blood, put it on his garment, took it back, and convinced his father that he was dead. All this happened when he was just 17 years old. 17. So while they were back convincing their dad that Joseph had been slain, trying to get him to convince himself that by showing him the evidence, Joseph was being sold again, this time in Egypt, into slavery. He was in slavery for 13 years. So put that in perspective. He's 17 years old, not even an adult. And he ends up serving the next 13 years of his life in slavery. So all his adult life until 30 was in bondage of his captors. While in slavery, his master's wife attempted to seduce him. When he pushed back and declined the advances, she pointed a finger at him, made him the bad guy, said, look, this guy's, trying to do something with me. They locked him up. So then they threw him in prison. By God's design, he made it out alive, healthy, and forward, ahead. And what did Joseph do to deserve this treatment? Because a lot of times when we talk about forgiveness, one of the main things we ask is, why this happened to me? Why would someone do this to me? Well, Joseph's fault was being favored. He had gifts. He was favored by God. He was part of God's plan to do great things. His father favored him also, and his brothers hated him for it. They hated him, and they hated on him because of this. Wasn't Joseph's fault. Genesis chapter 50, verses 15 through 21 states, and when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, this is where they begin to ask for forgiveness. So time had passed. Joseph was able to make it out, and he was in a good position. Another day I'll go into the story, But for now, just know that the time was done. He was free and in a good position. They were not. Famine and things like that. But, I implore you to check it out yourself. Genesis is a good book. All of them are great books. But if you want to know the story of Joseph, go ahead and check it out. Genesis, I believe it starts in chapter 37 and goes maybe 36 or 37, and it goes all the way to the 50th chapter. So Genesis chapter 50, verse 15 through 21. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph would peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. And they sent a messenger to Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive and pray thee now the trespass of thy brethren, and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spoke unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, ye sought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them, and he spake kindly unto them. So what's going on here? When their dad passed and they were in a tight spot, they were needing help. They had actually been tested. They had been put into a situation where they were lying. They got caught lying, and to get out of that, they were going to get killed if they had not done, or was it get killed or prison? They were going to be punished had they not brought their younger brother. But their younger brother was already there, and there was this miscommunication. They were all out of ideas, all out of options. So they said, "Listen, we'll go with a Hail Mary, and shoot our shot, see what happens. I mean, we're losing anyway." Now, they know David loved his father loved him. They used that as a way to get to him and say, listen, forgive us. They were feeling it. He was feeling it. What did Joseph do? Joseph forgave him. He forgave him. He loved his brothers. By the text, we see that he loved his brothers. Was he hurt? Absolutely. Was it difficult? I'd imagine so. But what did he do? He said, I'm in the place of God. I'm in the place of God. So all that what you did, you meant it for bad. You meant to do me harm. God used it to raise me up for his will. God had a plan. Joseph stuck to the plan. Was it easy? No. If you think he wanted to, I'm not sure. I don't think anybody wants to go through that type of transgression, type of difficulty, challenges that Joseph went through, to say the least. So what did they do? They asked him. He said, not only do I forgive you because I'm in the place of God, I'll also nourish you and your little ones. He took it even a step further and says, not only will I take care of you, I'll take care of your little ones too. Like you always good with me. And he made due on that promise. The Bible tells us that. Now, oftentimes we get caught up in our feelings. And when I say caught up in our feelings, I'm not suggesting that we ignore them or downplay them. By all means, recognize them for what they are, address them when when possible, but be moved by them, but not driven by them. So allow your emotions to be what they are. Allow your feelings to be what they are, but don't be driven by them. Sometimes our feelings, our emotions cause us to take action that we need to take. In certain situations, fear is an emotion. We feel it. When we feel fear, sometimes we need to run. There are situations, if there's something chasing you, big animal chasing you, and you feel that fear, you got to get out of there. Car coming down the road, they're not paying attention. You feel that adrenaline, you take off. It may save your life. But if you live in this fear, it can break you down physically, emotionally, and also mentally. So be aware of your feelings. Pay attention to them, notice them, observe them, and do what you must do to remain in the place of God. We don't want to be blinded by our emotions to the extent that we can't see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is God's plan. Whatever God's plan is for us as we continue through this path of Christianity, we learn and we grow and we learn more, and we continue to do what we need to do to satisfy God's will for us and for humanity. When we get sidetracked and we don't see the big picture is that's the time where we begin to become self-centered. We start using those I statements and you statements in order to shift the attention, shift the blame, shift those emotions, because it feels a lot easier to be angry than hurt. But anger is a secondary emotion, and pain is a primary emotion. So we feel the pain first, and to protect ourselves, it's a defense mechanism. We get angry. We feel it. We feel it all through our bodies. And we respond, we react. But the more aware we are and cognizant of what's happening with us, the better we can respond and continue, like I say, to be in God's place and do His will. One thing, if we do take a step back and we look at someone who's offended us, if we really take a look into it, we'll notice that is usually a reflection of that individual, and it doesn't have much to do with us as individuals. For instance, say the guy in the store. The guy in the store, he bumps into you. You thinking, what's going on with this guy, right? He keeps bumping into me. So now we're taking it personal. We're looking at ourselves, and we're wondering, what is it about this guy that keeps bumping into me? Why me? Well, what if you weren't in line? What if you weren't standing where you were? What would he have done? If that line was there, he probably would have bumped into someone else. Wouldn't have been you. Had you witnessed it from the side, you wouldn't have felt the same way as you feel it when it's happening directly to you. And the same thing goes for the story of Joseph. When we read this story or we hear these stories, it's like, oh man, that's tough. But just imagine one day in slavery, one day in prison, a week, a month, eating whatever they send you, forcing you to do things you don't want to do, missing and longing for your loved ones. One day. Sometimes we can't go one meal without throwing our whole day off. A simple thing. Just imagine being captive. That's a tough thing. We never really put it in perspective until it happens to us personally. And when that happens, then our eyes are open and things look a little different. And the good thing is in those situations, that's the time for us to really connect with others and be able to have compassion for others also, because we understand how hardship feels. Once we've understood how hardship feels, it doesn't have to happen that way. But when you understand how hardship feels, you're more apt to forgive, help out, have compassion for others, be less judgmental. Take a second to think about it. When it says that Joseph wept when they spake unto him, this was not a simple task. It wasn't a simple task. After all that had been done, he cried. He cried. This was a tough thing. This was all these years, all these emotions, each night going to sleep, wondering how his family are, wondering why his brothers would plot to do him like this. He loved them. He thought they loved him. He's doing the will of God. He's just giving information that was given to him by the Creator. Listen, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And here's what happens. He wept. When he wept, they wept also. So it was a lot of emotion being exchanged there. It was necessary. And sometimes it's still necessary. Forgiveness is not an easy task in most cases. Not when you take a look at it. When you take a look at it, it's normally something that has comes with a lot. But we have to make a conscious decision to do what needs to be done. What Joseph did is he called it out for what it was. He addressed it. He forgave him, but he addressed it. He said, what you did to me, you did it to do me harm. You attempted to hurt me. He called it for what it was. He didn't dance around it. He didn't avoid it. He didn't say, oh, let's just not talk about it. Let's pretend like it didn't happen. He says, listen, this is what happened. Everyone knew he was affected by it. It wasn't a secret, but he addressed it. They knew, but he said it anyway. He addressed it. After he addressed it, he forgave them. He let it go. And he continued to live out God's plan. Not only that, he treated them and their little ones the way that God commands us to treat each other, with love. He didn't lose his love for him. And he chose resilience over resentment. Now, resentment is bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. Bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. Resentment, holding a grudge, heart in heart, side eye, not letting go. Resilience is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness. Resilience. To be able to bounce back. Yes, it happened. Might happen again. It might. We're human. God created us like this. He created us human. But we can choose resilience over resentment. And it feels better. Now, why should we forgive? Why should we forgive? Why should we do it? Oftentimes we find ourselves at odds with people who haven't even offended us. And this is because we're still holding on to resentment from previous situations, other people. For example, your ex cheated on you. because your ex cheated on you, now the new person that comes along has to jump through hoops to prove they're faithful. You put all this pressure on the new person. They're coming in. They don't know anything about that. Even if you tell them, it's like, look, I didn't do it. They want to be who they are, but now you're pushing them to clean up the mess that the person before left, which isn't fair. It isn't fair to that person. It isn't fair to yourself. It's a burden. It could even be that same individual. So that individual, they offend you, your significant other, whoever, last year, last month, last week. You're still with them. You decided to be with them, but it hurt. It hurt what they did. And you just can't seem to let it go. By not letting it go, you're actively choosing to keep that static going. There's no need for it. It's difficult. It's difficult to hold the grudge. It's difficult to keep that going. And in my personal experience, for me, it's easier to let it go. I don't have to think twice about it. Because like I said before, when someone commits an offense against me, it usually has more to do with that individual than it does me. Because if someone says something to me, they're probably having a bad day. Doesn't mean I have to have a bad day. They're probably struggling with some issues and they don't know how to ask for help. So instead they lash out and they're frustrated, they're hurt, they're angry. So they go and they pass that on to others. Now, if you pick that up and you take it and you get, stiff and bitter and angry along with them, now the two of you are. And for what? You can choose not to. This is that whole behavior of, carrying these burdens from previous offenses onto the future. That's called toxic behavior. That's what they call it. And it seems pretty toxic because wherever you go, you're taking that with you. And the people that are close to you, they begin to feel these emotions. They begin to notice these behaviors. And it's not necessary. We go back to the word. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32 says, "And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you." Be kind to one another. For Christ's sake, God has forgiven you. So if God has forgiven you, who else do you think God forgiven? And if God does it, who am I not to do it? The Lord's Prayer says, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." We're literally asking for it. And I thought about that years ago. The Lord's Prayer, you say Lord's Prayer, but I hadn't really thought about it. And I thought deeply on it. And I was like, that's like serving food. You're serving plates. And it's your favorite food. And you shake the spoon. If you don't know what shake the spoon means, that means before the spoon gets to the plate, you've shook it so that stuff falls off, so they don't get the full portion. With the Lord's Prayer, you're asking to be served the way you serve others. What would that look like? What would you want it to look like? Because if you want abundance, you'd be abundant, you'd be a blessing. So what we want to do, we want to forgive. Well, let's go to Luke. Luke chapter 6, verse 37 says, "Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. We all want to be forgiven. Mark chapter 11, verse 25 states, and when you stand praying, forgive if you have aught against any, that your Father, which also is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses. There it goes again. We all want forgiveness. It's an exchange. It's an exchange. We want forgiveness from the ultimate forgiver. That's the best. The others are the rest. Not to say it don't count, but this is where we want it. Jesus put things in perspective. He always did. When someone had an issue, he says, look, you see this? I remember the story of the ditch and the jackass. It was like, he said some things that blew their mind. One thing I want to mention is that we're all offenders of some sort. We're human. We've done something wrong. We've done it in the past, and we'll probably do it in the near future. At the same time, we all want forgiveness, and it's easy to say, oh, but I would never do that. Some offenses, we categorize them, and we say, hey, I can forgive you for this, but I can't forgive you for that. Well, someone else may feel the same way. The thing that you think isn't so bad may crush them, but you'll still want forgiveness. So what do? Even when it's difficult, even when it's challenging, we forgive. Now, also keep in mind that when we learn, when we grow, we learn. As we continue to move through life, we come across situations and we learn from those situations, so we don't do the same thing that we did before. So we may not commit the same offenses, but yet we'll see someone come up and they'll commit an offense that we've grown past. We've grown beyond a certain offense, but someone else commits that offense. So what do? We look at them as if they're not where they need to be, but it's not our timeline. It's not on us to determine whether we should forgive someone for this offense at the stage that we believe they should be. That's why I love children, right? So you could see, a little baby, little 1-year-old, you pick the baby up, baby's laughing, happy, and the baby slaps you. Well, when the baby slaps you, you may laugh it off and say, hey, grab the hand, put the hand down. If the baby continues to slap you, you're going to get the baby away from your face or get the child back to whoever the child belongs to. But if an adult slaps you, then we look at it different. Because now we say to ourselves, this is a grown-up. This is a grown person. They should be in a place in life to know that you can't just go around slapping people. Not to say shouldn't go without repercussion, but if you find out later, or even in that moment shortly after they slap you, you find out that they have a mental disability, then you look at it a little different. Now you're like, maybe they didn't really know. But we think we know. We're like, look, you can't do that. Okay, so maybe you can't. But before we're so quick to take action on something like that, we should step back and say, you know what? That person's going through something. Let me stay out of their way or help them if I can. If it's going to cause me harm, I gotta step aside. I gotta step away. But if I can help them, then that's my plan. Maybe I can drop a seed. Maybe I can help them out. Maybe that's all it takes. Maybe that's all they need to make it to that next step. Everyone before may have been giving them a hard time. Each time they offended them, they give them a hard time, so they feel like they're an offender. That's what they are. That's who they are. They've identified with that. You come along and you give them a shot. You talk to them about God. Give them John 3:16. Let them know there's hope. Let them know you don't judge them. You don't condemn them. That they're forgiven. That may be just the thing they need to flip that switch and become a better individual. Get on track with God's plan for them. Now, having patience and continuously, for those who continuously commit offenses in our sight, sometimes it's not to us, but we witness it. It can be difficult at times. What I've done and what I recommend in these situations, we go to God in prayer. We find a mentor, a counselor, or someone else with wisdom, knowledge to help guide us through it. Someone who's been to these places, has been through these things. Reach out, get help. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22 says, without counsel, purposes are disappointed. In the multitude of counselors, they are established. I remember reading that in a different translation years ago. It says, plans are foiled for want of counsel, but succeed through many advisors. And that stuck with me. It gave me, it really changed my direction, because I had been going through a lot of stuff. I was just, bumping my head, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was trying to figure it out on my own. And when I read that, I decided to take action, and I reached out. I reached out to people and I asked questions. I've always been a pretty good listener. But I reached out to the right people who had the right intent. And it helped me through some serious challenges in my life. And I implore you to do the same thing. It was a game changer for me. Now, back to the guy in the store. Should we forgive him? Absolutely. Should we allow him to continue to offend us? Absolutely not. He may not be aware of what he's doing, and he may be aware of what he's doing. We might think he's doing it on purpose. He might be doing it on purpose. Guess what? That has nothing to do with us. We can either help or step away. My mom used to say, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say nothing at all. I took it even further. If I don't have anything good to do, I won't do anything else. I won't do anything bad. I'll choose good, or I'll choose to step away. It worked for me. It worked for me. We should forgive him. We should address it if necessary. And we should move on. We can help him, we help him, we drop the seed, and we move on. If we can't, we don't even drop the seed. It's a volatile situation, we get missing. And we steer clear of individuals like that, whether it be him or someone else. Have compassion, love one another, and it can be challenging to love someone that you're holding a grudge against. So release the anger, release the grudge, release the ill will, the ill intent, release the burden, the pain, and choose to live in God's love. Choose to live in God's love. Be in God's place. That is my word for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for allowing me to share with you. And next time I'm allowed to speak, I will be speaking on compassion. So stay tuned every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll see you soon. God bless. Have a wonderful week.